Morning everyone, just a little mechanical update if you like, and excuse the stuff on my nose. I'm obviously still dealing with the skin cancer issues. I'm about to go into hospital shortly, so hopefully that'll all get resolved soon. First it's going to be my foot and then later on my face, but anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today. As you can probably see, the bonnet is up on the Volkswagen. Now this is a Volkswagen 2010 TSI. Now the TSI with the red S and red I on the badge is a 1.4 litre twin charged engine. So what that means is it's both supercharged and turbocharged. Although turbocharging is technically a form of supercharging, somebody will jump on top of that for sure. Anyway, it's got a belt-driven supercharger for low-speed operation and a turbocharger for high-speed operation. Turbocharger being a supercharger that is driven by the exhaust. So the whole idea of that is the supercharger gives a nice throttle response when there's not much exhaust available to drive the turbocharger, which makes for much more power delivery or smoother power delivery at low speeds and then transitions into the turbocharger at high speeds. Now in order for that to happen, it has some pretty clever things going on. This car has been absolutely, touch wood, amazing. 230,000 kilometers. I replaced the supercharger clutch a little while ago. That's about all we've done with it. It's just absolutely been a fantastic car, and it gets driven and driven and driven. Now this one's particularly is fitted with a race chip down here, so it is chipped and it's pretty fast. Now I've been working on cars. I just worked out for a second ago, thanks to my good friend David McDonald, who kind of really got me started in working on cars. I've been working on them since I was 13. Now that's 50 years. And so I know my way around cars, and even more modern ones are not a challenge really. You just have to understand how all the systems work. Now they can get very complex and so on. And one of the problems that I have with mechanics, technicians as they're called these days, is they don't any longer get to practice troubleshooting, and therefore they don't get very good at it. If you go to the old school mechanics, people who were 60 years old when I was 17, people like my father, who's nearly 90 years old now, are amazing troubleshooters. And the problem we have now is with these code readers. The mechanics will tell you that the code reader tells you there's this fault. No, it doesn't tell you there's this fault. It tells you there's a fault, but the fault is not the reason for the problem necessarily. Often it's a symptom of the fault. So I'll take you through some of that with this, but I first want to speak about an incident last year that we had when we were on tour. And somebody had a breakdown, and look, I don't want to speak bad about the mechanics. They ultimately were really fabulous to these people and helped them out. But the conversation that went on is revealing about how modern technicians and mechanics work. So there was odd smells and odd noises and really weird things happening with this client's car on the way to meet us in Alice Springs. And what ended up happening was the car, I don't remember if it actually stopped. No, I don't think it did. No, it just had lots of problems with lights and lots of bells and whistles going off. So they took it to a mechanic, and the mechanic put the code reader on and said, you've got a faulty ABS sensor. They phoned me and said, we can't make it to the tour, we've got problems with our car, here's all the stuff that happened, and the mechanic's got it now and he's going to get a new ABS sensor. And I said, well, hang on, stop. That fault, what you just described to me, tells me the ABS sensor failure is not real. That I suspect what has happened is you have somehow damaged the wiring loom running to the back of the car, which is the reason for all the lighting problems and all the other things that are going on. And the ABS wire is part of that wiring loom. There's nothing wrong with the ABS sensor. The computer's just not connecting to it, and therefore it tells you you've got a faulty sensor. So that's one indication of how that works. Anyway, it turns out that the exhaust had a hole in it and it burned a hole through the wiring loom, damaged the wiring loom, and of course that made the tail lights and other things play up, and also made the ABS sensor fault appear. So now I'm going to take you through what's happened with this car. I do have the code reader inside there on the seat. I won't open the door for the moment, car is a mess, but we'll go through a couple of the codes. Now I don't have them in my head, I can't remember exactly what they are, but I did look them up. So there's 4 codes in total, 3 of them relating to various measurements of boost. So when we talk about a supercharger or a turbocharger, its role is to boost the pressure of the air going into the engine, thereby giving it more power. More air results in more power, basically. So there's a number of codes there that are saying supercharger under boost, turbocharger under boost. Now I could tell that by driving the car. When it started to behave a bit odd, I drove it a bit, put it through various throttle settings, and it wouldn't drive very well if you really booted it. If you were very gentle, it would drive just fine, but the limp mode light was on. So now, by driving it and doing that with the throttle, I could tell that it actually, I could not hear the supercharger. Normally with this particular car, because I took the supercharger clutch off one day and there was a whole lot of silencing material around the supercharger, it was very difficult to refit and really just results in overheating the supercharger. I left it off. So now of course you can hear the supercharger when you drive the car normally. Well, I couldn't hear the supercharger, so I knew there was something going on. I thought, oh, I wonder has the belt broken or maybe the clutch has failed. So I took a look at the belt and it's fine. Now the clutch could have failed, but probably not. So we'll investigate that later. I'm just saying that it's less likely that it's the clutch, having been replaced fairly recently and having operated for quite some time without any issues. Now there is a mixing valve. I'm going to point it out to you. This flap valve here, inside here. Take the cover off. There's the electrical actuator for it. Now this is a known problem once the cars get a few kilometers on them. So that's what I suspect is the problem, and of course, what other code comes up? That mixing flap valve, whatever its technical term is, that valve shows up as a fault as well. So all of the under boost codes were indicating an issue that is likely to be due to that flap valve not operating correctly, which is a known issue. But we shouldn't exclude potentially that there's a fault with the operation of the supercharger. Now that would be either the belt broken, which we can see it isn't, or the clutch not working, or the electrical actuator for the clutch has failed. So the clutch itself is perfectly fine, but the actuator for it isn't. So let's start with the valve, and we'll take a look what's going on there. I am loath to do what mechanics do, which is replace parts without some validation that that's where the issue lies. But unfortunately, it's actually very, very difficult to test that part. It literally can't be done. So that is a case where we will just have to replace that part. It's, depending on where you buy it from, $280 to $999. So we'll get a new part and see how that goes. Anyway, I just thought I'd take you through that little fault finding thing, and this is the kind of stuff that we often have to do, you know, on tour, just to find out what actually is going on sometimes. Hope you enjoyed that. Catch you later.